Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today we are honored to welcome the founders of Prairie Elder Care and Connectivities, Mandy Shoemaker and Michala Gibson. Welcome.
Yeah, we're glad to be here. Thanks for
Our pleasure. So let's start off, guys, with Prairie Elder Care. Tell us the story of how that got started and kind of the origins of creating this dementia-friendly living community.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Should I start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I am a nurse and have worked in senior living since I was 15, actually. So, and just fell in love early on with the older population, but especially people living with dementia. And I've worked kind of in every role and every different setting that there is in senior living, and just felt like the smaller home setting was just something that was very needed. And, you know, there's not one thing that's right for everybody. But for those people that don't do well in a bigger setting, the home setting is definitely beneficial.
And so we're sisters-in-law. So Michala's married to my brother. And I was an elementary school principal. And so in 2013, we both left our jobs. Michala was director of nursing at a large community, and I was an elementary principal. And then we started Prairie Elder Care, which is group homes for people specifically living with dementia. And we opened our first home in 2014. And then our second home a year later. And then in 2018, we opened what we call the Prairie Farmstead. And it's a really unique location. You hear a lot of people talk, and I'm sure your audience, probably a lot of them know about the Dementia Village, Hoogway in the Netherlands. And we're in Kansas. And so our sort of version of that was a little farm. And so our homes are on what we call the Prairie Farmstead. They share 5 acres, and we have farm animals and a koi pond. We have a fishing pond that will be functional this coming spring. We're super excited about. And so just in this group home setting, we're able to provide really a high level of not only physical care, but really we take engagement to the next level. So
What prompted you to leave your profession as director of nursing, yours as a principal of an elementary school, and venture into this kind of new territory? I mean, that's quite a leap of faith, right?
yes, and hindsight's 2020. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the thing that we both found was that even though we were caring, you know, for people at different ends of the age spectrum, there's so many similarities in what we do, which is problem solve and help people function at the highest level possible and support the families.
Right.
And
build trusting relationships. And for me personally, the Sandy Hook school shooting was kind of a pivotal moment for me in being in being a principal. And it wasn't that I was afraid that there would be a school shooter in my building, but I was afraid that one of my former students might become a school shooter or something like that. And that just kind of haunted me a little bit. And And I found that I didn't have the kind of patience for the littler problems that I really needed to have to be the best principal that I could be. And so we, in the winter of 2012, spring of 2013, really started talking about, between the two of us, we know how to manage people, we know how to build trusting relationships, and it was just a really good fit. And we both giving back, finding meaning, filling our cups in our work is very important to both of us.
And I think we're both pretty driven. And when we got to the point in our positions that we were like, I don't really want my boss's job.
Right.
In healthcare, when you're good at your job, you get promoted. And the farther you get promoted, the farther away from the person you get, which is, that's why I got into nursing, was for that. That's what fills my cup, is that connection.
I guess I'm just curious because we're professionally, we have a large home care organization, and we cover half of the state that we're located in. What made you decide the group home route versus doing like a home care route or a different avenue? What was it about, Prairie Elder Care that really drew you to creating these communities and these homes?
We wanted to create something different. I think we felt like there was the opportunity for a better life for people living with dementia that had been traditionally being offered.
Sure. Well, and
I think I might just add on to that, that was almost 10 years ago. And I think the world has changed a lot in the last 10 years. I think definitely there are some people that can't stay at home, like for a lot of different reasons. And ours is the best option for those people. If you can stay at home and make it work financially and just with your support system, that would be everybody's choice. So, yeah.
Well, I'm really drawn to these, dementia-friendly communities, villages, communes, if you will. And I just think it's fascinating. You provided some wonderful videos and photos for our team. And, it just seems like it would be such an ideal situation if there were more of these available throughout the country. Do you see that? Have you seen it spread in the last 10 years, or is it kind of still where it was 10 years ago? What's your perspective on that?
Up until COVID, I would say it grew in Kansas anyway. It grew pretty quickly until COVID happened.
The group homes setting.
Yeah.
But I would also say that we are not the same as other group homes. Right. So having that farmstead component and the one of the things that's always stuck in our minds from the dementia village is somewhere along the line, I read an article where they take people to the bus stop in the village to reset, because people, when they go to a bus or, that was something that they did a lot. It was something that I would call like an anchor activity in their life. And so for us being in Kansas, there are other ways that we can do that. So if you're just in a house, those anchor activities can be loading the dishwasher, sweeping the floor, unloading the things that we did in our regular normal lives that we just might need some assistance initiating or getting to. And not that our homes are cleaned by somebody who lives there that's sweeping. That's not the point, but they feel that sense of purpose when they sweep off the patio, that they feel like they're contributing, and it makes them feel good. So there's this way that they can reset by feeling that sense of purpose or just engaging. The other thing is that animals provide this sense of spontaneity and novelty that is just priceless, because we have people in our homes right now. We have a resident who's turning 100 on New Year's Day.
Wonderful. Happy
How cool
birthday.
is that?
Yes.
And we have a gentleman that's 64 that lives with us. And so you're talking 2 or 3 generations
Right.
of people. And so when you have the goats, you can see them we have 2 goats and 2 pigs, and then chickens that they don't run around. Well, if we bring them into the backyard, they run around. But to watch the goats butt heads or the chickens scratch and peck around the yard gives everyone a common experience to enjoy together and feel community around. And it's just really hard to come by that in other ways.
Yeah. And also, we have a big community garden. So, a reset can also be picking cherry tomatoes or feeding some of the overripe stuff to the pigs, or, just those things that you feel like you're taking care of somebody or something by doing that. And then, there's been lots of studies about nature therapy and the importance of that and how that helps that helps with depression and anxiety and all of those things. So we try really hard to it was like -2 here for a few days. So we didn't get all of our nature therapy in during that time,
right.
But any chance we can.
And in terms of that spreading, and catching on, I would say when we very first started, so we opened the Farmstead 5 years ago. And I would say we were the only place that we knew of at that time that had anything similar. There was a place in Minnesota years ago. I don't know if that Lori LeBay was one of your recent, and Lori a few years ago when we were planning the Farmstead connected us with a woman named Judy Berry,
Yep.
who did something similar a few years ago. And then there's a place in Texas, Teresa's house we know of, and maybe a couple more that are doing similar types of.
That's really where I was going with that. There's, obviously group homes are pretty prevalent, for different levels of care, different environments, but there's not many that have this nature enhanced care as part of the, the process or the environment where, you can look out the window and, see the chickens or the goats butting heads. So I just think it's fascinating, and I think it is very therapeutic. It's very therapeutic. We see
Absolutely.
Advertisements and ads and, posts all the time for, these lifelike cats or lifelike dogs or even, little babies to kind of supplement the real thing. But here you're bringing that to life for these people with dementia. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah, we do use those other things too.
Sure.
And one of the things that I love that really, we have these 2 chickens, one in particular that is just super tame and really likes to be held. And people that you would never in your wildest dreams think would hold a chicken and enjoy it are just mesmerized by them and petting. It's pretty.
That's amazing. Let's talk too, because you both are co-authors of the book Now Is Found.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that book, you talk about the need of people living with dementia for having community. Talk us through the book, and did the book come before the homestead or the elder, the prairie care, or where did that all fit into it?
About that,
Yeah.
sort of.
So I think that the great thing we did was our first 2 homes, we took existing homes and modified them to meet the regulations and all of that. And it was a great way to work on how do we want our house set up and all of that. But also that was the time that we kind of built our engagement model, which is giving back community connection and control. Yeah. And so we had a little time in between our second house and when the farmstead started. And we're like, well, let's just write a book.
Why not?
Let's just write a book about that.
And it's not as easy as you might think.
No.
So it took a lot longer, but I think what we came out with was a really great representation of who we are and what we believe in.
Absolutely. And so to continue on, so we started the planning for the farmstead in 2016, and it opened at the very beginning of 2016, and it opened in 2018. And so it was in that time during, kind of early 2016 that we're like, oh, while we're working on this and developing this plan, we'll write this book. And really what the book does is it talks about why giving back community connection and control to people living with dementia is important. And really the basis of that is people living with dementia need to feel in control. And that feeling of control doesn't come from unlimited choice or just this total independence, because that's where they build frustration, that we need a scaffolding that provides just the right level of support for them to feel successful. And so we do that by proactively meeting people's needs. And so that means that the design of the homes needs to push people to the center, to where they can find the help that they need. So they're not wandering around looking for somebody to help. And for people living with dementia, by the time they've wandered a few doors down, they forget what they're looking for. They don't know what their needs are. And then they get frustrated and anxious and paranoid, and, things, just all of those things build on each other. And so if we can provide them with proactively meeting their needs, that when they leave their room, we don't have private bathrooms in our homes. They just share a bathroom with one other person. But basically when they walk out of their room, there's either the bathroom in front of them, or they look the other way and they see
the kitchen and living room.
And so there's always somebody in the kitchen and living room that can help. And so that part is really important. And we don't believe that you can only proactively meet needs in a group home setting. We believe that can be done anywhere.
Right.
And so the book is about how we did those things, particular residents, and kind of those success stories, and sort of how it didn't, somebody's move into Prairie Elder Care was really, really tough. I mean, there's some poetry in the book as well that is kind of paired. It's about the residents and kind of what some of their issues were. And we had one resident who it was the night she moved in, Donna, she's really featured in our book. But Michala got called at midnight.
Yes. So, Donna was a very special person to
oh my gosh. I mean, and she's really throughout the entire book.
Yeah. And she got a call at midnight the night she moved in, and she said she called her kids and told them she was going to slit her throat, kind of to
let them know
that
this was not okay,
So I think we just try to be very honest about it's hard, and you just have to be in. So I got out of bed and went there, and I said, well, Donna, it's midnight and I had to get out of bed to come here. So let's take care of this tomorrow, you'll still be mad at your family tomorrow.
Right. Let me ask, and this, either one of you, feel free to chime in, or both of you, when a family calls and they're inquiring to get information about potentially, moving into any of the homes that you have, what's that process like? Do you recommend they bring their loved one out to kind of spend the day, or do they see the place, or is it they just show up and now you're living here? How does that work?
It really depends on the person.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay.
And with COVID too, that changed, that has changed a lot of that.
Yeah. So in general, we believe, people living with dementia, we want to take into consideration their ability to process information, to predict, to think about the future, and what, when someone is in the decline, dementia is, or Alzheimer's, any type of dementia, a lot of times their executive function is one of the first things impacted. And so they may not be able to process, if I move, what it will be like. So I'm sure a lot of people will get that when you ask anyone who's living with dementia a yes or no question, they're going to say, about 90% of the time, they're going to say no, because that's the safest answer. If I say no, then nothing changes.
Right.
And I can see that and I still feel in control. But if something enters into my reality that I can't see what, it does mean change, and I can't process what those changes mean for me, I'm not going to want to do it.
Right.
And so we want to talk to the family. And so when a family calls, usually they talk to me first, unless it's someone that, Michala does get calls too. And so I first have them tell me about their loved one before I even tell them about Prairie Elder Care, because how I tell them about Prairie Elder Care is based on what stage their loved one is in. Are they in crisis? Do they just need to know the down and dirty and whether I have a room or not?
Or are they planning for down the road? Like, are they trying to gather information and all of that? So
right, exactly. So it's not up and running right now, but we often have a day program that is in the lower level of the building that we're in right now. And so during COVID, actually, we had several people that were in our day program moved in, and they did go spend a few days at the homes. So we do have some ways for people to spend some time and see how they do. But we always tell the family, even from people that have been coming for the day program, when you're talking about a move, it's a completely different beast, and people respond completely differently. And most of the time, it's really hard, even if it's set up the very best it can possibly be set up.
Sure.
Do you have anything else to add about that?
Well, I think the first move, if you're moving from your home you've been in for 40 years, where you raised your kids and you have, with your spouse, that's going to be rough. So if you have had, when we first started, we kind of got the reputation, when you're first starting out, you take everybody because you need to fill your, and so we got a lot of people that weren't able to stay in their current, like they were in a facility and it wasn't working out and they needed something different. Once they've had that first move, usually it's a little bit easier. So, but like Mandy said, it just depends on the person and the situation.
So for somebody who might be listening or watching this, and they might find themselves in this situation trying to determine, should we let mom continue staying in her home, or should we start considering a placement? What advice would you give them for what to be on the lookout for and what factors to take into consideration when making that decision?
Good question.
Well, I have a lot of ideas about this, but one thing I think is doing your research ahead of time so you have an idea. I think a lot of people still think of, the big facility, and there's been this push for like a hospitality based setup, which I think maybe we're kind of getting away from that setup now, but just seeing what's out there and what would be the right fit for your loved one. And I think if you find a place that you really connect with, getting on the wait list, even if you're not thinking something soon. And then I think it's important to know about how long the leadership has been there, how they do their staffing. One thing that we do that I have always felt strongly about is that we have our staff works every other weekend. So you never come in and have nobody that knows what's going on, because that's, especially with dementia, that is huge. If somebody knows your routine and all of that, I think that's really important. And then during COVID, this was harder, but a pop-in or coming early, or, I think that is you can get a feel for what things are like when they're not expecting you. So those would be my top tips.
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I would add is really about timing. People say a lot, when is it time? How do I know? And I think for somebody who, particularly a spousal care partner, that's a unique situation. And there's a whole different level of guilt that comes along with that. As children, we're expecting that we're going to take care of our parents. And so those are, as a spouse, there's a different level of commitment in a lot of marriages. And we end up, we have couples who have been married 20 years and couples who've been married 60 years, and one of the things that we tell people from the beginning is we're not going to judge how you do this. Everybody does it in their own way. But one of the top things that I tell people to know you're ready is when you have more days that you feel like you can't do it anymore, then you don't. Right. So when you pass that 50-50 threshold, it's time to move. So look and find a place before you get to that point. Yeah. The other thing is be prepared for a crisis, because things can be going along really great and you can be thinking, I can do this for a long time. But dementia progresses differently for everyone, and be ready for the next level. And the next level could be what does put you over the edge. And then the last thing I would say, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add that the crisis can happen for the person living with dementia or the care partner. And we've had a lot of that happen recently. People that, like you ignore your problems because you're taking care of the other person. And then it's a situation where you're in the hospital and, you've got this other.
What happens with the loved one you're taking care of? Yeah. And the last thing I will say is we have seen there's a sweet spot for people moving that we don't want people to move in too early. And we will tell people your loved one is not, even though you think you're ready, your loved one is not ready, at least for our setting. They may need to go to assisted living first. Right. So we will tell people if we don't think it's a good fit yet. But once somebody is to the point where they wouldn't remember if they've eaten, that they're not necessarily oriented to time and place. And it might be kind of hard to get them there, that's a time to really consider moving in when they can still connect easier with people, because sometimes it makes for a rougher beginning. But once some of the most successful moves we've had of people that have transitioned really well and then been able to really benefit from everything that our setting has to offer is when they move to us from independent living. So they kind of, struggle in independent living a little bit and then come straight to us. Those people have been really just the right fit. And so I just think that waiting too long, sometimes what happens is people just have this really dramatic decline because the transition is so hard, and it just throws the person into shock and crisis and trauma.
We've seen a couple of things I just want to follow up with on, knowing the right time and knowing the right questions to ask. We've had several families who we currently go into these facilities to take care of their loved ones because the facility, when you're talking not necessarily a group home setting, but more of your assisted living, independent living, even some of these memory care facilities, they have one caregiver or one support staff, one aide who's taking care of a hallway. And they're not going in every room and taking that person down to the cafeteria or down to the activity. It's really an independent, even though they're an assisted living type of, service. Yeah. And we have one family, and it's heartbreaking. the son has moved his mother into 3 different facilities in 2 years. And each time he, comes in, meets with our team, says, well, I still want to keep the caregiver and she'll just go along with mom. And we're trying to explain his mom's condition with her dementia is advanced enough where she's not a good candidate for assisted living, but these larger, well-known, chains, if you will, it's kind of similar to buying a car, right? They're going to give you the answers you want to make you really like that car and really want that car. And, we're trying to explain, mom's not a candidate for assisted living. If you're going to look at facility settings, you need to look at specifically memory care settings, because in assisted living, she's not going to get the support she needs. She's not going to get the interaction. And you're probably going to end up moving her out again, because these places, none of them have the next step for the memory care wing. And 3 different times, 3 different move-ins, 3 different move-outs, and now she's back in her condo. But the problem I find is a lot of times families, and it's not their fault, you don't know what you don't know, but they're not understanding their parent or their loved one's condition and where that condition is at and where it's headed. And they're not knowing the right questions to ask to say, well, if it advances, or if you find after our 30-day probationary period she's not a candidate, what are my options? Well, it's either you move out or you just have to pay an outside company to come in and take care of her 24/7. And that's the heartbreaking part for us is, you're paying these facilities a large amount of money for this room. And, there are nice amenities and services and activities, but if the person's not able to take part in them, it doesn't really matter what they have. And so, we go in and now we're with these families 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're paying the facility on top of it. It just is heartbreaking to see that.
We get people moving in to Prairie Elder Care in that situation a lot.
Yeah.
We see it all the time. Another thing I'll say about assisted living is a lot of the people in assisted living aren't very nice to people that have dementia.
Yeah.
They don't tolerate repeated questionings. You already told me that, and so, we just, a couple things that Michala and I decided early on. First of all was we were going to, if it killed us, and sometimes it darn near practically has, that we were going to deliver what we promised to people. And if we couldn't, we were going to tell them.
Right.
We can't make this better. This is as good as it's going to get. And if this isn't good enough, that's okay. And we're going to tell you. And then the other part is our decision-making process. And our decisions are made first is what's best for the resident. Second is how does that decision impact the other residents in the home? Then how does it impact the staff? And then how does it impact the bottom line?
Right. And
because full beds in this business is the way you stay in business. And especially now. And in our just belief, and in our experience, those are the things that keep beds full, delivering what you promise and not making decisions that are convenient for the staff or just because that's policy or, but making decisions that are based starting with that individual. That those are just the most important things.
And then that's important. And I think it's great that you guys, live by that, because so many times families, like we've said, they don't know what they don't know. And they're going into this very naively, not in a negative way, but if you haven't had a background and you don't understand and you don't know what different services are available, they're just looking to make the right decision and the best decision for their loved one. And oftentimes it's not always the right decision, though, even though they made it with the best intentions. So, helping to better educate them and give them a better understanding, I think is crucial, not only for them, but ultimately for the well-being of their loved one. Let's talk a little bit about why you think it's so difficult for families to connect with their loved ones who have dementia.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that kind of segues a little bit into this is I was going to add on your previous comment. I think there is a huge stigma related to dementia and, anything that would be kind of considered mental health.
Right.
And I think that the family, whoever that primary caregiver, a lot of times tries to shelter them, and so they don't reach out. They don't try to build that community around both of them to help. And so I think that's something that we have seen a lot. And that's why they're in a situation when it does become a crisis, because they've tried to just take it all on themselves. So I think that's a huge.
Well, and I know you both know Dr. Karlowish, and when we were talking, the origins of that perspective or that stigma is rooted deep in the annals of medicine and healthcare, where they used to basically just label the person as being senile or senility, and if you can't treat it, you can't help it, right? And
Don't talk about it.
So and then you go into the Medicare Act, and then it gets labeled as that is more of a social issue, not a healthcare issue. I'm hoping to see that kind of transition in maybe the next 10, 20 years, hopefully. And I think it is slowly, but like you touched on, Mandy, with people with dementia, there's kind of that residential conflict, if you will. I'm thinking of the two billy goats, right? Kind of button heads, because we've seen this with even our own families that we take care of, their loved ones in this facility, and it's not memory care specific. It's just assisted living, and they're new and they're trying to get in with the cliques of the ladies or the gentlemen, but they don't have the social wherewithal now because of their dementia. So this group, they're not wanting this person to be part of it. So they kind of, in a way, shun them. And now and if they're one of the only people there with dementia, they're going to be even lonelier than they were at home, and it's unfortunate. And I think that goes with, like you mentioned, with, leadership and training and better, the staff having better education about dementia, because like even with our own staff, they go through specific dementia and Alzheimer's training so that they know how to recognize and identify these issues. But these staff that are dealing with, several hundred people under one roof in one building, they need that training probably more than anyone, because now you can identify, okay, is this person dealing with dementia, or is it just they're having a bad day? Are they depressed because of the move? There could be any number of emotional factors going on.
Right.
And they just get moved in and they get accepted. And then, 30 days, 90 days, whatever their probationary period is, the family's being informed this person doesn't fit the criteria. Well, how did they fit the criteria when we moved them in, and that's the upsetting part for me.
Yeah. And for us, if somebody doesn't fit, it's a failure for us because we missed it and we should have more proactively addressed that. I want to go back to connection, because that we kind of veered away from the book. And so the book is about giving control. And when people feel in control is when they're able to connect.
Right.
So from the person living with dementia side, we need to feel in control before we can connect, because if not, if my needs aren't met, or I feel out of control for some reason, I can't focus on anything else. I can't connect with the caregivers in the setting, my family, other residents, or even the environment around me. But if I do feel in control, and the person next to me feels in control, and our needs are proactively met, and I've got my coffee the way I like it, and she's got her coffee the way she likes it, we actually see each other, and we can connect and actually engage with the people who are around us. So I would say that's from the community connection control perspective. But connection from the caregiver side, it's really hard to connect with our loved one that we're experiencing so much loss with. And it's really hard to focus on, to not focus on the loss And, oh, well, my dad, we get with connectivities, people say to us a lot, well, my dad would never do a craft. And it's like, well, it's not really a craft. You're building a game. And, with some of the things that we do with connectivities, it's let's create this novel scenario, kind of like the goats, where we can have this common experience that doesn't involve the loss that we are currently involved in and experiencing, but it pulls us into a different moment where we can actually connect in that moment. And so it's learning how to let go of that, learning how that connection feels, because it feels pretty good once you have it. And so those things come from, being a part of something, from reminiscing, from having, talking about shared experiences. And then I think it comes from a lot. One of the things that you just brought up was a lack of education and not knowing that I shouldn't say, right. Hi, Grandma, remember me? Do you remember my name? Like we want to, that kind of comes naturally, that we want to give people a test when we get there to see if they still know me, right? Sure. But really, it's not about me and whether they know me. It's about giving them the tools to have a successful experience. So instead, I say, hey, Grandma, it's Mandy. I'm Mary Louise's daughter. And I loved, I just remember when we used to come to the lake and had so much fun, that you just can feed it to them and they're going to be so much more willing to come along with you.
Well, let's talk about these connections and, these crafts and things, because you guys are also the co-founders of, behind you there, Connectivities.
Yeah.
And you sent us a great box for January. And, I was reading through the menu that you provided, and I have one of the crafts here. It's, filling Frosty, where you can, you have these great little cotton balls and, little utensils and this plastic shape of a snowman. And it's really to help keep them engaged. But, somebody might see that and say, oh, my dad would never do something like that. But, you have building a bird feeder, hockey on thin ice, snowball launchers, which, I think I might use that myself, and a lot of other great activities. And that's just January's menu. So you kind of gauge it for the season and the month, because the last one was out with the old, in with the new year, and creating, various 2023 fun designs for families. How have you found the response has been to Connectivities and some of the feedback you may have gotten from families and people that have used it?
Well, Connectivities came from our dark time.
Right.
And when we were in the worst part of the staffing for us, and Mandy didn't say this, but she also is a CNA. And so in 2021, staffing was really bad. And we were all everybody was working the floor a lot. And so we had a really hard time keeping our residents engaged in meaningful activities while we were just trying to keep things moving. And that's where Connectivities came from, was from our need to keep people engaged and have things that were appropriate for them and able to be modified based on what their abilities are and strengths are.
Yeah, so we ended up doing these grab and go bags just in the middle of the kitchen table or the kitchen counter, and that just really grew into Connectivities. Would you describe why the snowball thing, what you would, because we have lots of men at Prairie Elder Care, and they are some of our most enthusiastic participators in Connectivities. And so how would you get a guy whose family would say, my dad would never do that, to do that activity?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times families would be like, well, my dad was a lawyer. He is not going to put cotton balls in a plastic bottle. I get it. So, but first off, I think the thing is kind of how you set it up. If you say, here's this craft, of course, they're going to say no, because that's kind of the default. But if you set it up like, I have this fun thing that I brought to do with you, or would you help me with this? I think it's all in how and we've been doing this a long time, and is, a huge part of what we do at the houses. So I get that we, have a few tricks up our sleeves and that type of thing. But looking at it through their eyes, it's more about the process and utilizing those skills that they still have retained. So like if they still have some fine motor, utilizing those, or just like the repetition. Like sometimes it's hard to start a task for someone living with dementia, but once you get started, having that repetition and then, hey, I put them all in, like that's a really rewarding feeling for them. So
yeah.
And another thing that I would say, so in that bag that you held up, there's little tongs. And so with each activity, there's therapeutic goals. And so for a guy, I would say, hey, Dad, we need to work on you're such a strong guy, but you don't have very many opportunities to make your hands stronger. So let's work on your hand strength. And so even just explain it to them that the purpose isn't that you're making this snowman. The purpose is that you're working on your hand strength, or we want to keep you sharp. So when it's just all about how you
approach.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you'd be surprised. So I mentioned we have a gentleman who's 64, and his wife still takes him to the gym. I mean, he's a guy's guy. And our September box, so they are all themed. In our September box, it was the back to school theme. Okay. And one of the activities was making a little fridge magnet. So we say a lot, it's not about the product, it's about the process. It's not about that we're making a fridge magnet. That's beside the point. For him, it was about they were making a school bus, and it was about, I can line these popsicle sticks up straighter than anybody else at this table.
Competition.
So it's not, let's see if you can make the school bus. Let's see how straight you can line those up. Mm-hmm. And so he loves everything. I mean, and he's so determined. Even the things that are really hard for him, he's going to finish, at least in his own way. So I think, and so when things seem like putting stuff in this, putting cotton balls, and there's some really cute silver ones too that make it look cool. Putting these in there seems kind of mundane, but it's something I can actually complete.
Yes, absolutely.
And be successful at.
Yeah. And even if I would have never done that in 1,000 years before, I'm different now. Yeah. And just to feel the good feeling of completing something, who cares what it was that I completed?
Well, and it's very similar to, what we suggest to families, things as simple as a daughter was helping do her parents' laundry. And she says, it takes me forever. My mom keeps coming behind me, trying to get into the dryer and we told her, just give her a laundry basket, put her in the bedroom or in the living room, have her fold that laundry basket, and then let her refold it until you're done with the laundry, because it will give her a sense of purpose. It will give her a sense of contribution. It's not so much what the project is, it's what the project provides, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we've worked really hard at is taking all the work out of it, so that every single thing, so that the bag comes with every single thing you need. There's a QR code on each bag, and if you scan the QR code, it takes you to a special site that has instructional videos for every single activity. So it gives you the activity in 30 seconds or less. It just shows you real fast, kind of in TikTok style, this is what you're making or what you're doing.
Nice.
And a lot of our things, if anything launches, Michala came up with it.
Or explodes. I like explosions,
So
I'm not the crafty one either. I like something, exciting to happen.
yeah.
So.
And so the whole idea behind it is like our favorite activity from our December box was this little Rudolph. And you make it out of paper cups, but it launches. It has a little rubber band mechanism that you push it off another cup. And it's just funny. It's fun. And sometimes it hits you in the face and sometimes it goes fun. And so just creating those, I'm sure a lot of people of the listeners are familiar with the Eden alternative. And, they talk about the plagues of the elderly or elders is helplessness, loneliness, and boredom. And the antidote to boredom is spontaneity
and variety.
Yeah. Right. And so this provides that variety, that spontaneity. And even if your loved one can't actually make Rudolph, it's worth it to just make it and launch it and get them to laugh.
Absolutely. Now, so viewers and listeners that are watching and they may be interested in, ordering the connectivities, what's the process? Is it a subscription? Is it as you decide to order? Can you just order when you want to? How does that work?
Well, we've worked hard to make it easy. And so we have several options. Kind of our flagship product is what we sent to you, and that's our monthly box. Each box comes with 8 activities plus brain games and whatever else we decide to throw in there. It has the instructional videos. There's a home exercise program in each one, because we know that people really want, if they're in this caregiving scenario, they are invested and they want to be doing the very best that they can for their loved one. So we want to give them as many tools as possible. So there's an occupational therapist created home exercise program. There's a music therapist video, and there's also a Spotify playlist that goes with the theme. So you could play it in the background and have it on there. And those boxes you can order on our website, connectivities.us.us. And you can buy just one, and it's just whatever, it switches over on the 15th. So we will sell the January boxes until January 15th. And then on January 15th, we start selling a February box. And we do some teaser kind of stuff to let people know what the theme is and know, on our Instagram and Facebook, we're working on getting on our website, some more, show and tell kind of things. We're always a work in progress. So people can buy it like that. They can save 10% and subscribe. So we do offer a monthly subscription. And so we also offer then a community of support. So we have a Facebook group where we're actually just getting ready at the second week of January, we'll be doing a Facebook Live, or kind of like a Facebook Live, with just that group of people, Q&A, talking about how to engage, giving them kind of some of the special tips and tricks that we've shared today. And then we also have had really great success with our sensory kits or sensory boxes. You want to talk about those a little bit?
Sure. So our sensory boxes are designed for using over and over again. So that's something that we've started with just seasonal. So we have our winter is currently available, and we offered our fall box. And so spring will be coming soon. I'm ready for spring. Yeah. I'm ready for the spring sensory box and spring in general. But it's a great way to connect with all of the, smell, touch, taste, all of that, so that you can reminisce, and just a way to be engaged over and over again.
And one of the things that we've heard from people that are using the sensory boxes is this took me to, there was somebody with their dad that commented in the Facebook group that they had the fall sensory kit, which it's still actually available. They're available anytime, just because you can look at what's in there. And if that appeals to your loved one, you can do the fall sensory box any time of year. And so, she had commented saying, and we provide cards for how to use it. But you can also do anything. And so she had said that a lot of the things that were in it had caused her dad to reminisce about like old hunting trips and stories about just stories that she had never even heard.
Wow.
And so, that just really took him back to a place that she wouldn't have been able to go without it. So those are just one-time purchases for the sensory kit. And then we do have a mini box that is just a smaller version of our box. If somebody thinks that 8 activities might be too many, or if they just want to give it a little try,
Sure.
The mini box is at a lower price point and just has 4 activities.
And I think each month we come up with a theme that appeals to you, whether you're 5 or 95, or anywhere in between there. And we do trial everything with our residents, because even the best laid plan, we've been doing this a long time, and in our head, it works perfectly. And then we get in front of our residents and it's a big flop. So it's nice that we can go through that and be like, okay, well, this size didn't work, but maybe if it's a little bigger, so we work out the kinks.
We trial the concept of the activity, and then we trial different materials. So it has there's even a 2-part process to the trialing. Because we want to be off, just like with Prairie Elder Care, we want to deliver what we're promising.
Right.
And so, and we just really have an amazing team.
And it's fun. I mean, it's just fun to do it. And I think the world needs more fun. And just because you're old, or just because, you're not the same as you used to be, you still deserve to play and have fun and connect with people.
And caregivers need more fun.
Exactly.
And the one thing that we haven't really talked about is that these are incredible multi-generational activities. And I would say, just from that connection, community connection and control, and a recommendation to people who are caregiving. And when we say caregiver, we don't just mean people who are at home caring for somebody. We also believe that family caregivers who have a loved one who is living in a group setting have a very important role as well. And we don't take that lightly either. And Connectivities is great for both. It's great to take with you for a visit. So we also had a Christmas sensory kit, which, the idea behind that was it's something that you can take with you. If you live out of town and you're going to be going to visit, it's something that you can take with you so that you have a successful visit. And so kids love Connectivities, adults love Connectivities, and it creates this really great dynamic for everybody to have just that. It's actually the title of our book, Now is Found. What that really means is that finding the now is that we are all in this moment together, and the loss that we're experiencing with our loved one through the progression of this disease isn't relevant right now. We are all having fun right now, and those feelings stay with all of us, and it helps us as caregivers give us memories of this time with our loved one. And even if our loved one won't remember what we did, those feelings linger. And so after our visit, the fun that we had, they still have that in their heart.
That's tremendous. And I just, like I said, the box was amazing. I've been looking through it and reading over the different activities. One thing I would mention too is I think 6 out of the activities for the January box are all repeatable activities. So it's not just use it once and you're done with it. You can redo the activity later in the day or the following week or even next month if you choose to. Just a tremendous product. We'll have the links to everything in the show notes and up on the screen for you ladies. And It's just been a great honor and privilege to get to talk to you and learn about Prairie Elder Care and the work you're doing with connectivities. And it's exciting to see where you guys go next.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
Thanks so
excited
much.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us and
Thank you.
love the work that you're doing. I feel
Yes.
like you just have really quality guests and that offer a lot for your community.
We appreciate that, and we're just trying to get resources and information out to these families and the caregivers who they need the resources almost as much as their loved ones do. And like we've talked about, there's a lot of bad information out there, a lot of missing information, but not enough resources. And the work you're doing is helping to add to those resources that families so desperately need. So we appreciate that, and anything we can do to help you guys, or you'd like to come back in the future, let us know. We'd love to have you.
Sounds great. Thanks for helping us get the.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
All right. Bye, Lance.
Happy New Year.
When dementia takes hold, it's so different than the person that you're used to. What I wanted for my mom was safety, happiness, and a purposeful life. When I met Mandy, you understand that she and Michala weren't interested in the bottom line. What they were interested in was my mother and how she transitioned from one place to another, understanding how difficult that is for a resident.
In 2014, we opened our first home and quickly opened our second home after that in 2015. And that was a great opportunity for us to develop our engagement model based around community, connection, and control.
And if we can proactively meet people's needs, then they're more open to building those connections.
We have amazing connections between our care partners and our elders. You can connect with other residents, families, then animals.
Being in Kansas, we felt like a farm setting that would really give us an even greater opportunity for engagement for our residents. People who may have a harder time, may be more reluctant to connect with other people, might feel more at ease with animals, or just be able to have a different type of connection. If we can bring animals into the picture, if we can bring a sense of daily chores and that daily routine of a farm, people will have more purpose and be more readily engaged, because that's such an important part of life, is feeling like there's something to do.
They're not just caregivers, they're like family. What I've noticed is that it truly is a community. The common areas are where everybody gathers. They have events that don't feel like they're organized events. They feel like you were going over to your family for a barbecue.
Community is the result of the connections. And really it's around a shared emotion, whether it's happiness, fun, sadness. We call it kind of finding the now, that in this moment we're all together and we are much less concerned that I'm living with dementia or that they're dealing with other physical deficits. And right now is good and fun.
I truly never imagined that there was a place that feels like home instead of an institution. My mother's laughing and smiling. And because of where my mom is now, I don't have to be the caregiver. I can be her loving daughter. That's what I was looking for.
Mandy and I are both driven by making a change, making a difference in what dementia looks like.
What we're after is a place where people want to bring their whole family. So my grandma lives in this coolest place where I love to go see her, and we can do these things together.
And we're not done yet.
Nope, who knows what's next?
Who knows what we'll do?
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to thank Mandy Shoemaker and Michala Gibson again for joining us today to share their story of Prairie Elder Care and Connectivities. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.